Excellent. Okay, so my name is Armands, and I really do appreciate feedback, so here's my Twitter handle, and I hope that at least one person will be tweeting. Also, I took into account, I don't know which one of you said about Matt's presentations, that too much jokes, and I do understand that IT is serious business, so I will try to remove most of the jokes from my slides. So, I want to tell you more about my idea, why I kind of came up with this presentation, because I've been quite an active speaker in Agile community for past 3 or 4 years, and I've been the last 2 years in Vilnius in Agile Tour. But lately I've been kind of feeling that there are two extremes in which I myself can speak and in which I hear other people talk. So one is kind of the basic level where there's what's Agile and how do you do that and stuff like that. And the other one is more a kind of philosophical approach about what to do. And then there's one in the middle that refers to specific experience, but then again, it works only in my specific case. So I was kind of hesitant about the slides I'm making and about the talk I'm making. And this one was actually intended for use to present to kind of governmental institutions that we're going in Latvia. We're trying to get the governmental institutions to implement Agile, and this was the initial idea to the most basic possible level of people that have never heard about Agile, what to expect and what not to expect. And as I was making these slides and as I was talking to people about what should I put in them, I kind of understood that it still really resonates with people that have been doing or claim they have been doing or think they have been doing Agile for 3 or 5 or even more years. So that's why I kind of think that this presentation should be relevant not only to ones that don't know anything about Agile, but also to those people that are fairly familiar with it. So first, the disclaimer. So I want to say that my understanding of Agile may be different to what your definition of Agile is. And my understanding of Agile is doing what makes most sense in a given situation. So it's not about methodologies, it's not about doing this or doing that, it's just about doing the thing that makes most sense. And one of those, and if doing waterfall for a specific project makes most sense for me, then I will do that and I will consider myself being Agile. So that's kind of, be aware of that this talk is a subjective understanding of that. Also, I will try to kind of give a glimpse on my experience with different projects, and feel free to ask any questions, and I will try to go as much in depth as possible, as long as there's no classified information. So these are all kind of my experiences from my real life, not something that I made up. And also, are there any Scrum Masters here? No, okay, so nobody will be hurt even during the course of this presentation. So when I made this presentation, I kind of tried to... So it works or it doesn't? It kind of, okay. So I try to identify what has done the biggest damage, or what has been the most controversial topic when it comes to Agile, that my understanding of what's the most controversial is. So any of you have any ideas? The Twitter guy? No, okay. So scarves do not make us smart, but still, my idea that the most kind of evil thing that ever happened to Agile was the Agile Manifesto. And why? Because a friend of mine told me this story when I was finishing this presentation. She was in a university, and professor of mathematics said that here's one book that is this big, and here's 2 books that are this big, about the same topic. And he said, do not be fooled that reading the small book you will be doing less job, because you will have to think more for yourself. And I think that just reading from the Agile Manifesto these 4 kind of things that basically everybody knows fools us into thinking that we kind of know something when we actually misunderstand that. And I kind of divided this into 4 groups about the myths and truth and stuff like that, and it's mostly it's lies. So I could have just called this presentation Lies About Agile, because there are a little bits of truth. But the first group is people that think that they know Agile and do Agile because they have read the 4 points in Manifesto. And why that's a bad thing? Because our minds seem to work a specific way. So, and I've been on that side of the, where's the pointer? Yeah, I've been on that side of this conversation and on this side of the conversation. And for those of you, if you cannot read, so basically the programmer comes up to a project manager and says, so there's no way we can do it by March 1st, and it will cost a lot more than $100,000. And we tend to just remember the important facts. So it comes out as, okay, it's March 1st and $100,000. So, and it's the same way with Agile Manifesto. So you're all familiar with these, right? Who is? Raise your hands. I'm disappointed in you. Okay, so basically what Agile Manifesto says is that individuals and interactions over processes and tools. What it implies that in a specific situation, it's more important to kind of follow your individual understanding than stick to a specific processes. So basically, that's what Mats was saying, that well, you should follow a plan. What if the plan is wrong? Well, you should still follow the plan. And Agile is kind of, Agile Manifesto warns against that, so it says if you have a specific understanding, then you should follow it. And people tend to read this one. They kind of tend to understand this one, and then when the time goes by, it transforms into something like this. So basically that there are no processes and no tools in Agile. And which, in my opinion, is false. Because under Agile, as I said, my opinion is that it's doing what makes most sense in any given situation. So any tools you have available to yourself, any processes that you deem appropriate can and should be used. So just to give you a kind of a quick list of stuff that I use basically in my everyday life. So there are some tools for you to check out if you do not already use them. And there are kind of some processes that you can also use in your daily life. So just to kind of give you a quick example. So then there's the second thing, which says that working software over comprehensive documentation. And again, people tend to read that. And it goes out as there is no documentation. And I think it was 2 weeks ago when we had a wonderful wildcard conference in Riga. And I was talking to a former colleague of mine. Somehow the topic of Agile came up. And she said that, well, it really needs to be explained. Because there I was coming to work, and people told me that we will do Agile. There is no documentation, yet I was stuck writing the documentation. So again, it's not that Agile pits documentation against working software. You have to have documentation at least in some form. And it's hard to do actually. What I tend to like in my project is have the documentation as small as possible, basically the smallest possible set that you can have, because that's the only way that you can have documentation that's alive. You can have documentation that's updatable and that's readable. How many of you have seen, especially for the backend systems, manuals that are this big? Okay, so there are a couple of unlucky ones, including me. So basically, in one project I came in, and there were 4 books this big in user manuals. What we transformed it to was 56 pages for the whole system. And it was really a lot of work, because writing a precise and simple documentation oftentimes is a lot harder than writing some blah blah shit with screenshots and stuff like that. So, but you have to kind of understand that even the code itself, if it's well written, it can be documented. So in my opinion, documentation should be sufficient, meaning that with all the documentation you have, you are able to understand how the system works. And it should be alive, meaning that if you have some changes, the documentation should be updated also. And in which form you have documentation, it doesn't really matter. There are many kind of types. You can have code. If it's good enough code, I mean, nobody expects, from user perspective, nobody expects a user manual for Google search. Like, that would be ludicrous. You can have user stories. Maybe that's sufficient for you. You can have manuals, diagrams, architecture documents, acceptance criteria. All of these are actually documents. And it's not that if you're doing Agile, you should not have some sort of software architecture in place. You should not have descriptions of tables that you are using in your database and so on. And that's something that I've kind of heard a lot. And in my opinion, again, this is not true. Next one, customer collaboration over contracts negotiation. Again, you probably get my drift, so this goes to there are no contract negotiations and no contracts as such, apparently, in Agile. And since I was initially doing this for presenting to governmental institutions, this was a big problem with them, because how can we work with you if you're Agile and you do not have any contracts? Well, of course you have to, unless you're on a really, really trust basis with your client or with your supplier. By the way, how many of you are from supplier side? And from client side? And everybody else just popped in. Come on, wake up, people, you had your coffee. Okay, so basically, you usually end up having a contract, and there in last Agile Tour in Vilnius, there was a whole topic dedicated to how to describe how to have Agile contracts. So you just need to add some small things to the contract if you have the possibility, and it works perfectly fine. So the most important thing I think that needs to be included is a scope as such, and also a scope replacement procedure. Because if you're doing Agile, the requirements will change, and as you saw from the previous presentation, so basically requirements change every day due to not stable business environment. So you need to have a procedure to replace one user story or one whatever you have in the contract with another. So, and that's basically the smallest thing you need, that the possibility to exchange something for something else. And that's where you have the agility. So you don't need one thing, you throw it out, you put another thing in. And of course, it helps a lot to have the user stories with estimates. So you know, if you are putting one thing in, you know how much your project scope increases or decreases. Also a good thing, since cooperation guidelines, but basically that's a good thing in any contract to kind of understand how much the client is involved and how much the other parties are involved, and acceptance criteria, which should be there anyway, but people tend to forget that even in Agile development, you still need some sort of criteria to say that you have done a good job. And that's basically what you should have there. Then there's responding to change rather than sticking to plan or following a plan. And again, this comes out that there is no plan. I've been working as a project manager lately, mostly doing the project manager stuff, and I have major beef with this one, because of course you need to have a basic idea of where you are going. Unless you kind of have money to burn, endless supplies of money, then just throw it away and stuff like that. But I kind of tried to think about analogies for this one, and since I saw in Oracle Open World they now have these rack attack ninjas, and Spotify, that was mentioned earlier, also call their teams squads now. So I understand that military is new new black in IT. So I kind of came up with a military analogy. So basically, no, I will leave that one for later. So basically, you need to have some sort of plan. It definitely will not be as detailed as say waterfall or stuff like that, but you need to have a general understanding where you're going. You need to have project management. You need to have understanding. So the things that must be in any given project, regardless what methodology. So there should be a project plan. There should be clear priorities of what you should do first, what you should do later, so you understand to make the most important things first, rather than leave the most important and the most cumbersome things for later, and then you don't have the time to do that. You have to have estimations. There's this new craze in Agile community. You have no in front of some word, and then becomes a new thing in Agile. So there's no estimations movement that's really popular lately. I don't know if you heard about that, but in Riga I heard that really good comparison, that you take a word or take some action that used to work in the past, put no in front of it, and call it a new thing. So, but estimations do work. They may not be correct, but they give you a general understanding of where you are and what you're going to do. And of course, there need to be some sort of broad scope. At least you probably are on some sort of budget, and you probably have some sort of acceptance criteria, so you know when you succeed and when you fail. And of course, there should be understanding of what you are actually doing, why you are actually doing, because that's the way you bring value. And other things, it's like management planning, tracking. Without those things, unless you're working alone and then you're doing those intuitively in your head, you still should have them in your projects. So, and because of these things, I think in Agile community, there's a lot of kind of disillusionment. And now I read, I don't know which one of, don't remember which one of Manifesto kind of founding fathers wrote a farewell to Agile, so that it doesn't work anymore. And this is Gartner hype cycle that they use for all the things to measure where they are in their maturity and so. And Agile right now is somewhere here. So it's basically really fast falling down, and even in the Agile community, it's kind of not fashionable anymore to call yourself Agile, because people are really disillusioned in it. And I think the reason for that is the silver bullet seekers. So basically the people, and the Agile community is at fault themselves, that kind of hype that Agile is kind of a solution for all your problems. You just start doing Agile and your projects will be on time, on budget, your hair will grow, you will not need Viagra anymore and stuff like that. So it's not. It doesn't work that way. There's no silver bullet. So the one thing is that we will do stuff faster and better. I did an investigation on this one because it's my kind of feeling that you can do stuff better and faster with Agile. And I have had personal experiences in project teams that were cut half the size, and we yet performed better than the big teams while switching to Agile. But then again, I kind of just left the good guys and kicked everyone else out. So that's not really fair. If I just had random half of the team, probably the performance would not be that good. I also did, I teach a bit in the university, and I also did an experiment with guys with Lego bricks. And I had, I kind of had the specification of Lego brick house, gave it to the students, and with one group I worked with kind of Agile requirements, another did the waterfall. And of course it's not a representation, a kind of a clear representation, and then I switched the groups just to make experiment a little bit cleaner. And what came out was the situation that Agile team delivered better results in 40% less time. And what they said that I think quoting, I think we had too much people on our team because some of us weren't doing anything. Whereas people that worked with Waterfall, they delivered shit results that wasn't really close to what I kind of imagined. And I showed the picture to them later of what the specification I had. They didn't finish it in time that they had, and they said that if we only had 10 more minutes to write the specification, then result would be really, really great. So that's why I think that this is sort of true, but I didn't find any kind of clear figures on that Agile is twice as fast or you deliver 10 times better results or stuff like that. There's really no research, and in some part I think it's because you only run project once. If you run it twice, there are different kind of circumstances, so you cannot kind of compare them. What I think you should kind of, since I don't have a clear answer if it's a myth or it's a true, I think what you should expect is faster identification of problems, because if you work in iterations, they will surface faster. You will have faster communication. You will have better understanding because you will be closer to your clients. Also, you will have shorter feedback loops. Again, if you're doing something wrong, you will find out about it sooner than later if you're working in iterations. And you can expect quicker initial results. Again, one example from my experience, we had a project quite a huge project in government, and the system was split in several parts, and we got one part of the system and other supplier that was, and we worked with basically iterative approach. We used Scrum, and the other supplier worked with the waterfall. After, I think, and we thought that, well, it's a good time to compare these results. Again, two different companies, so not really a fair comparison. But still, after I think 2 months, we delivered first prototypes that were already working and that people could actually log in and try and do stuff. Whereas the other company was just finishing the documentation, so the analysis phase and stuff like that. So in that sense, you get hands-on experience a lot faster. And do you really need that analysis documentation? I don't know. What you should not expect is tenfold increase. So again, be realistic. It will not be 10 times better, 100 times better. And also, there are no miracles. Doesn't matter how agile you are, unless you're a magician. So then there's, we're coming up to my military analogy. Again, from governmental institutions, I have heard that we should do it if we do not know what we need or what we want. And kind of waterfall, in my opinion, is kind of like a ballistic missile. So if you've done your initial calculations, and if your target is stationary, then you have quite a good chance of hitting the target. Agile is like a homing missile. So you can, if your target is moving, and even if you were a little bit off in the beginning, you can still adjust and hit your target. This approach is like having monkeys with a bunch of grenades, just throwing stuff around. Just going, and you can hit something. You can hit a gold mine, actually, but how do you know if you hit something if you don't have any idea what you're trying to hit? So if you kind of had this approach, unless again you're doing R&Ds, then maybe you will discover Viagra, next Viagra or something like that. So if you have money to throw around your grenades, go ahead. But if you don't, please go back to your project definition and think, what do you actually need? And maybe you don't need anything. You will have surplus in your budget. Excellent. So then there's the third group, that people that kind of once tried Agile, but it didn't quite go according to their plan. And they're usually on the developer side, and I identified with that quite a lot. And what they say is that it's a great skill. So if you're doing Agile projects, you need to have a team of seniors, because juniors just do not cut it. And again, my experience is that it's not really true. Because usually there are kind of, I like to split people in 3 levels. So there are the kind of top specialists, the kind of the Spetsnaz of IT, that they work in agile way intuitively because they kind of try one thing, it works, they try another thing, it doesn't work, they adjust, they make it work. Then there's the middle tier that are senior developers. And they know how stuff works. I once tried to convince a guy to do test-driven development, and he said, I don't need it. I don't make mistakes. I don't need to test my code. And so there are these guys. So it's so hard to get them to try new things. It's just impossible. But junior programmer, he comes in, he's a blank slate. He doesn't know how things work. Just put him in the right environment, give him the right mentorship, he will outperform any kind of senior developer within reasonable amount of time. And I think that agility is the way how people's minds actually work. And again, to use an analogy, do you like beer or wine better? Beer? Yay. Wine? Okay, let's go for beer. So raise beer guys or girls again. What's your favorite beer? Okay, you? Okay, so live beer. So okay. So basically, the kind of I think that why we think in agile terms or why we are agile in our life. So you're sitting at home watching TV, and you want a beer. What do? Well, I usually live beer. You may not get it in the shop. I understand, but still, if you weren't going for something that exclusive, you kind of get up and go to the shop. You do not draw a detailed plan of how you are getting to the shop. You do not kind of try to think about every aspect. So you do not say, okay, I need to go 10 stairs down. Then I need to go 10 meters right ahead. Then I need to turn right. And what if there's a dog there? A huge dog. What do you do then? So, and because in real life situations you adjust. Or if you go to a shop and there's not there isn't any of your favorite beer. So what do? Do you have a contingency plan? Do you just, okay, no beer, switch to plan A17. So you go for your second favorite beer. Because you adjust, because that's how you work. And going shopping for beer is a lot less complicated than building an IT system. And why do we think that we can plot in every detail the roadmap for our IT when we cannot plot in every detail our way to the shop? Doesn't really work in my understanding. Yeah, impossible to do under fixed price. Again, this is a lot to do with the contracts, and I will not spend time on it because I have 10 minutes left, and I will probably have some more interesting slides there. So basically, it's to do with the contract. So you cannot do under fixed price because you do not know what you're developing. Well, first of all, again, you should have a broad understanding of what you are developing. Secondly, you can agree about the scope changes. So going back to the contract, you can do it under fixed price. It's just a matter of how much you will deliver under this fixed price. Of course, there's a risk, but it's not impossible to do. So, not a valid point in my opinion. Then there are people that kind of take one practice, and usually it's Scrum, because it's one of the easiest, and say that, well, they use Scrum, therefore they are agile. Well, I have had projects where I have used Scrum, and I do not think that those were agile projects, because basically we had to move, we had to upgrade the system. So upgrading the system is just taking from here to there and not breaking anything. Just, it works the same here and just put it here. That's it. No agility in that one. No unclear scope, no everything. Just one-to-one here, there. That's it. But we use Scrum just because to have these iterations to identify problems and stuff like that. And then there were projects where I did not use Scrum and they still were agile because we used other methodologies. For example, I use Kanban for maintenance projects because Scrum does not really work with maintenance that well. So same goes for test-driven development is not agile. That's one of the practices that you cannot use. So in my opinion, agile does not equal Scrum. It just doesn't. So yeah, everyone should be multifunctional and there's no specialization. So that's kind of a psychological issue I hear when I talk to people Again, usually on the supplier side. Because we tend to choose our professions for some reasons. And well, I do not think that that myth is entirely correct, but some of the programmers do not have brilliant people skills. They want just to sit and program. And that's it. And leave them alone. Don't make them go to the client. Don't make them drink coffee with the client, because that's horrible. They want to write their code. And then there's the other part. There's analysts and project managers. And they really relish in the fact that they actually drank coffee with CIO of that company. And you, programmer, did not. So they kind of, they are afraid to lose their white gloves. And they're thinking that, well, if we start doing Agile, and there was a kind of analysis themed conference in Riga, and where analysts were really scared that they would be out of the job because there are no analysts in Agile. Well, surprise, surprise. Work still needs to be done. So whether you call it whatever different name, you still need to do some sort of analysis. You still need to do a lot of project management, and maybe even more project management in Agile projects than in waterfall projects. You still need to code, you still need to test. You're just not necessarily called a coder or a tester, but then you're not kind of universal. Some of us, I hate writing documentation. I suck at it immensely. I'm just horrible. And I had to write documentations for some projects. I didn't like it. I will try to avoid it as much as possible. And if I can, I won't do that. So there are limitations for any of us, and we need to try our best to learn more, because that makes us better as a professional, as a person. But there are limitations. And again, what from the previous presentation, don't be afraid to fail. So everybody fails. You do not get your favorite beer. You do not come home crying that you failed miserably because there was a dog on the way and you got scared. So you go around. And one most important thing to remember, because kind of failing is scary, and I apologize to Chuck Norris if you're in the audience. So you are not Chuck Norris. So you cannot do everything. So know your limits. And then okay, so that's for that part. So people who kind of tried and by the way, do you have any questions? No, I'm absolutely clear, 100%. Okay. So then there's the kind of final group in my presentation, the non-believers. And Agile community is really harsh on them because they do not understand and appreciate value of Agile. Where in my opinion, a lot of the points are more or less, I would say, more true than the previous ones that I've stated, previous kind of illusions about Agile. So this represents a fight between an Agile believer and a non-believer. I do apologize for the joke, by the way. I do feel that their kind of their rationale is correct because they come from specific environment, but there are ways to get around it. So one of the things that I've heard that was actually quite shocking to me until I tried to analyze it, that Agile is more expensive. Well, how does that tie in with the fact that I said that Agile usually is faster and better? Because if it's faster and better, it shouldn't be more expensive. Well, it depends on what you look at, on what you are looking at. So, in my opinion, it should not be more expensive than say waterfall development, and you should get a better end product. But why people tend to think that? Because you have a closer collaboration with your client, and us suppliers, we don't see the inside cost of the client project. So they do also have to pay salaries to their employees. So since they are more involved on their side, it may be more expensive. Then again, if you look at the unit price, and since there are usually kind of still there are senior people doing Agile, maybe a unit price is a bit better, is a bit bigger. But then again, if you factor in that it is faster and in the end you get what you need, not what you asked for in the beginning, which is a huge difference in my opinion, I think in the end it's cheaper. So the thing to think about, in my opinion, is that costs will be structured differently in Agile and in waterfall projects. Yeah, and then it requires more involvement from the client. I right now have an ongoing hobby, so to say. I bought a new apartment, and right now they're tearing it apart and kind of putting in new floors and new walls and stuff like that. And I'm scared being here because I cannot control what those guys are doing to my apartment right now. And it's only logical, from my opinion, if I want to have a good result, I need to be there, and I need to get involved. It's not like I just say that, okay, build me a house, I will come back in 6 months, and here's €500,000. And I would be really, really surprised if I had that kind of money to burn, that I come back and there's a beautiful house just as I imagined. It just doesn't happen. So if you want good results, you should get involved. It's plain and simple. So yes, this I think is one of the rare truths in my presentation, that it does have, you need to involve more your client, but it's for the better result. Again, this is a big one with government institutions. You cannot sign off on anything. So basically put your signature on the finished document, because that's a big thing. And sometimes it's a really, really big thing, especially if you get financed by EU, because you give your application to the EU for such and such amount of money for such and such things that you will have to do. And 2 years down the line, you discover that it's not longer valid, but you spend all of your money, developed some sort of system that was fit for your initial need but is not anymore, and what do you do with it? Well, you basically just put it on a shelf and it stays there. So it's a really, I've been I haven't been actually in one of those projects, but I've been working next to my colleagues that have been in that sort of a project. It's really demotivating. It's horrible work that you know that you are building something that will never be used. But sometimes there's no way around that. So if you are in that sort of situation, make the best of it. And you need to tick all the boxes in the specifications, because your client will have to hand over to the EU and they will give them the money. So this might be a problem. And yeah, the final thing is, of course, it blows up scope. Just so if you let the users anywhere near the requirements, it just explodes. Again, you need to do your work. You need to have good project management. You need to understand what happens to the, what are the priorities. You need to see, you need to plan, you need to manage both client expectations and your own people. You need to keep track of everything, of all the scope changes. Of course, if you say, yeah, just give us your changes and we will do that, it will blow up scope, it will blow up your budget. And you're lucky enough if you're working on time material basis, because you will not run over budget. But probably you will not do business with the same client again. So you need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand what's the value you're delivering. You need to plan, you need to manage, and you need to keep track. And that's it. I would really appreciate some questions. I don't believe you don't have any. You don't. That's sad. Okay, well, I will be okay. So if you are afraid that we do not, we still have time, right? So first, we still have time. Second, I will be out there, so try and catch me, and I will answer. Yeah. Well, again, this is the type of question which I say it depends. I will tell you my kind of what I do. I'm not sure if it's applicable in your situation. So what I do, I work with professionals. And I hate writing documentation, but if I have to, I will do it. And I will do it as good as I can. Because somebody, all of these things need to be done. And somebody will pick a short straw. And my example is that in my team, for the guys, there are usually, I don't know, especially if you're in maintenance projects, there are usually 1 or 2 issues that nobody wants to touch. Because it's just a hellhole of code, and if you just take one brick out, just all the systems in the world will explode. And those issues tend to drag on for months. And I had these issues, and if I see that they stay longer than, say, I don't know, a week, a month, or a specific period of time, I say that, okay, guys, it's not going to solve itself. We need to decide who will do that. And we just decide. And again, we are professionals, and we will do it. Same with the documentation. So if you don't, it doesn't write itself. So somebody will have to do it. Did I answer your question? Okay, any more questions? Yeah.
Do you have any basic techniques to persuade the clients to do the agile, because most of the big companies are old-fashioned minded and they want to have a strict budget and so on. So we have to ask you to do the presentation that we understand all the benefits of it.
Yeah. So basically, short answer is voodoo. but to be serious, well, that's why I made this presentation. So that's why I understand, because the client needs to understand that it's not a silver bullet. So you need to understand the shortcomings, and you need to understand what to expect. It's even better if you can show these results. And I really like that the one example that I told you, that we had the 2 streams for the same project for 2 companies, and we delivered software, whereas they just delivered heaps of documentation. And you cannot work with heaps of documentation. So if you have, you need to just talk, and there are no special techniques. You need to persuade them. Okay, so the question was that some government agency, or rather the statement was that some government agencies love documentation. Yes, that is true. And in these cases, again, I said that you need to do the minimal amount. If you really hate writing documentation, don't take that project. There are other companies that will do that. But if you have taken that project and you need to write documentation, well, you need to do it.
Hello, I want to ask, and how about agile and bugs? How about
Agile doesn't have bugs.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the same. Again, it's an easy. It's the same as you deal with anywhere. You fix them.
Are you creating a sprint for a bug,
No, we don't have a. We kind of we do not have a sprint. Again, what you're thinking, you're thinking in Scrum terms, kind of. We do not have a fixed sprint for bugs. We just fix bugs as they come in. So what in my teams, again, it depends. But in my teams, what we do, we kind of have a specific amount of time allocated for new development, and we have a specific amount of time allocated for fixing bug or for improving the code. So Agile, again, my Agile does not have bugs. Of course it has, and you need to deal with them. How you deal with it, it depends on your specific team. I do it this way.
Thank you.
Yes, we have questions. Do we have time?
The question is, after the project is finished and client says that functionality is still wrong, if you have not many documentation, how can you say it's change request or it's bug? Because you, while being agile, not being agile enough to see that functionality is wrong. So how you define wrong functionality? Or it's bug, or it's...
I cannot go back to the slides, unfortunately. Oh yeah, now I can. Where's the one? no. Yeah, so basically how you deal with it is with this one. So I do recommend have it everywhere because the acceptance criteria. So if you say you need to understand for yourself when you are developing code, not for the client, but for yourself, how will you make sure that your code is working? And you need to write that down. And when the client comes to you and says, well, I think this is a bug, you can, I really like the approach of Oracle for this one. They don't have bugs, they have features. So if something doesn't work, it's a feature. So when the client comes to you, then you will say that, okay, if it's an acceptance criteria and an acceptance criteria is not met, then that's a bug. If it's not, then that's a change. Easy as that. Or do you want more kind of